Welcome everyone to another community call. Let's start with the first topic on the agenda. Patrick, would you be okay with introducing the V2 of the RSC reward?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little bit of context here. On ResearchHub now, essentially tokens are distributed in like a very V1 kind of way. For every upvote a paper receives, the person who posted it receives one research coin. And so this is a good way to just get things started. But it's not a reward scheme that can scale or really set like incentives. I think that will help to grow ResearchHub or cause healthy research behaviors coming out of it. So kind of like part of this project, we'll be iterating on the reward scheme forever, because as like dynamics in the community change, as more people come in, different incentives are going to be at play. And so we always have to be conscious of like what we're rewarding and thinking about how to make it better. So that way we can essentially incentivize the community to be more effective as a whole. So this is, again, like a very early version. It's an improvement on the V1. But like that is to be said, over time, this will like change drastically, most likely. And so the concept here is when you have one vote or one RSC per upvote, it's kind of like a slow emission of RSC. The communities at like early stages, there's not like a ton of upvotes being shared on the platform. And so just in the grand scheme of things, it's hard to kind of like one of my theses for ResearchHub initially is that researchers would want to like share content in exchange for like $5 to $10 worth of coins when they could go like have dinner or something after work, like if they have a free hour in the lab. And so at the current like coins per upvote ratio, it's unlikely to happen because you'd have to get like what at 3 cents, like hundreds of upvotes on your post to be able to just go buy a beer or something after work. And so the idea here is we want to essentially like have a predetermined emission of RSC. So we've talked a little bit about this like 5% per year type of number. And the idea is that we can distribute this like, X number of coins based on the number of upvotes on the platform at any given time. So like in theory, the way this would work is there would be a bucket of RSC like available every day and would get distributed to users based on how many upvotes there were in that day. So I'll screen share here and kind of like show the formula of how we're thinking about it. But yeah, that's the idea where we can have like a set number of tokens and distribute them based on like essentially how much activity there is on the website. So this is how we're thinking about it now. Essentially, there are like 5 different time buckets that average out and go into like a weighted average. So in theory, basically, like we look at all of the upvotes that have happened in the last minute, hour, day, month, and year, and then make a weighted average of it. And that'll give us like a total number of upvotes that could be applied to the day's rewards that would be given out. And the concept here is that basically all of the rewards will be subdivided by the upvotes, and there will be like a consistent stream essentially being earned on the website every day. And so there are a couple of implications about this. Well, I think one other important part too is that initially the people receiving the coins for upvotes were the poster of the paper. And now when you share a paper, essentially the authors of that paper will receive 75% of whatever tokens are given to the paper. And then the poster receives 25%. And so the idea here is that like if you share a cool paper, like you get a pretty nice finder's fee of 25%. It's nothing too shabby. But at the end of the day, most of the rewards go to the people who like actually did the work in publishing the paper. And in theory, there can be a nice little pot of research coin waiting for them for whenever they want to come claim it. So that's kind of how we're thinking of it initially. Does anybody have any questions? I'll end up like writing a blog that kind of like describes this in more detail and helps to go over some of the thought processes. But yeah, this is the idea here is to like, again, like these incentives are not going to be perfect, but this is going to get us closer to like a reasonable emission of research coin where like it makes economic sense for grad students to spend like an hour of their time like during their like downtime in lab on ResearchHub. So yeah, I guess to get things started, Lynn.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to say is I really like the new idea about like the authors of papers getting like a large portion of what's rewarded, because I've actually not felt, and I've actually started largely rewarding to comments over papers, because I haven't actually felt great about people just getting RSC for sharing something somebody else has done. So I think this is definitely a good thing, because that's been like a not just moral ambiguity, but just like, they did the work, not, I mean, not just legal ambiguity, but like, moral ambiguity of like, they should be getting, something for it. So I definitely approve of that.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I totally agree. It just makes it feel more legitimate. Like if the people doing the work are getting the rewards for it. I guess, do you feel okay with the 75-25 split? Does that sound like an appropriate number?
I mean, I'm okay with it. I don't know if other people think it should be skewed even more, especially if comments are also getting rewarded. But, I definitely think it's a step in the right direction. It has to be at least that.
Yeah, what does everybody else think? We can always tweak it in the future, but this is kind of like a good first step, we think.
Yeah, I think it's probably good. I think you definitely will want to tweak in the future, though, just seeing how it, ends up and how much money people end up getting as a result of that. So.
I think it's likely we'll try and like make a habit of revisiting it every 6 months or so, and like taking everybody's feedback and saying, hey, what should we change, and like actually implementing those changes on like some kind of regular cadence. Nick.
So I just wanted to clarify to make sure I got this. I think it's a great idea. So does that mean that if, let's say I'm an author, I wrote a paper, somebody else posted it, it got tons of upvotes, that RSC would be kind of held in escrow until I kind of claim that paper as my own?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. I think that'll be great because it's kind of like a scaled reward system for scaled contribution to ResearchHub too. So somebody that we would really want on the site is somebody who would have a big reward for joining the site too. So I think it's great.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, it feels like we're appreciating the right people more. So it feels nicer. I agree with that. Jeff?
Yeah, just like obviously like the idea as well. One thing that to keep in mind, I guess, would be like in terms of, and I'm not sure if what ResearchHub has in place already for something like this, but like Sybil resistance. So making sure no one comes and starts, spamming a bunch of upvotes or things like that. I don't know if we have anything in place already for that, but that's something I could see getting gamed.
One thing we've talked about is making each user's upvotes like limited. So you only get like 5 per day or something like this. So there's like an opportunity cost essentially on upvoting in order to help like make people be more judicious. I think like with that being said, it's 100% going to be spammed. Like we know this, and like part of this is we're going to roll it out at a very low emissions rate. So in theory, like we want this to eventually get up to the 5% per year, but we're going to start it out at like 0.5% per year or 0.25% per year, just to like see how it's working, and like like slowly start to scale it up if we see it's working, and then like always be on the lookout for like failure modes and try and like not scale it up too quickly before like we kind of recognize the easy ways to game it and fix it. Cool. So Anton's got an important question here. How would the RSC be split among the authors of multi-author papers? This is an important point, and I actually don't have the answer for you. I'll check with Pat afterwards and post in the community channel. I think the way it's set up now is that it's split evenly between all the authors. So if there's like a bajillion authors, they'll all just get like 1/1000th or 1/1 bajillionth of like the total coins. That's not ideal either. Like in theory, right? Like the first author should probably get more, and it should be like, I guess, like changed like based on contributions. But that feels tough to do. Another thing we can do is just like give it to the first person who claims it, and then just assume that people will distribute to their co-authors on their ends. But yeah, we think it's probably safer just to split the pot among all the authors just to get started.
Yeah, splitting sounds good.
I think this was where I had the concept of that fractionalized NFT for each publication. I think it makes just so much sense because a second author could have done 40% of the work, or a second author could have done 2% of the work. I've seen that whole spectrum of things. So to equally distribute the funding based off of the percent ownership someone has on the NFT of the publication, I think makes sense here for just when people support the publication with RSC.
Yeah,
think
totally.
it can probably evolve in the future if we do pursue the NFT round and in the house reviewing, right? Peer reviewing. We could introduce some sort of contract where when people submit the paper, they establish what are the proportions of the contributions between the authors and kind of like set it in stone or in writing or an NFT in, so that they consent to it. I don't feel comfortable tweaking it after the fact, right? Because we don't know how they distributed the labor when they were publishing it. So probably just assume the easiest equal split, I guess.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's, we're thinking we'll, like, again, start low and scale up kind of as we figure out some of these wrinkles. And so, yeah, I think, Jeff, you're totally right. Like, having authorship contributions in NFTs is a super compelling idea. And I think we probably will do something like that. We had a board meeting last Thursday, and we decided the next feature we want to try and build is like incentivized peer reviews. And so NFTs in theory would come after that. So they're probably like 3 to 6 months away. And basically what we want to do over the next 6 months is like dive into all the ways we could do NFTs and like think like deeply on like how to like actually do it the right way and make sure the right incentives come out of the V1. So yeah, that is to say we'll start at like a very low rate, and probably after 6 months, once we have more of the infrastructure built in to like do things like, you know, even more like appropriately, we can scale up the rewards to make sure that that actually happens. Cool. What if we have editors? What if we have editors have access to an administrative function on the site to moderate users? Arshia, can you elaborate on this question?
Hey, hey, Patrick and everyone. Yeah, I mean, I was just listening to what Jeff brought up, and you know, I thought it would be cool to have some sort of function on the platform as editors, because you know we facilitate discussions and you know conversations and articles and all that, and then if as we grow, if there could be an administrative panel, so maybe we can see users and how many you know upvotes they have, or you know how many they've used or how many articles they're posting, you know, so we can kind of monitor the spam if that ever happens, and you know we can moderate and facilitate as needed.
Yep, it's a great idea. We're even thinking like as we build the peer review feature, we'll have like in theory some like stuff that editors can do to help facilitate that. So having like an editor admin dashboard, I think makes a ton of sense. And like we'll pretty much rely on the editors to help like scale like the kind of human piece of ResearchHub, you know, to like a bunch of users hopefully. And yeah, in order to do that, you definitely have to have some kind of like moderator dashboard. I know Reddit has some pretty good stuff where like moderators can organize themselves behind the scenes. So yeah, I'm not sure when that'll be in the roadmap, but we definitely like, we need editors in order to scale. So we've got to give people the tools to be able to do, you know, their jobs appropriately. Nick?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick.
Yep.
I just want to say real quick to second that, because I think as an editor, being able to have access to some sort of higher level look at the site or at our hub as a whole would be super helpful.
Yes,
Just
totally.
you know what any other user would see.
It's a great point. We might be able to like do something more bespoke, like in the time being. Like we have metrics kind of for ResearchHub as a whole, and we could maybe do some metrics like on a hub, you know, per hub basis, just to give people like ideas of like, you know, who's commenting, like who's like contributing or whatever. I think there's like a 80-20 type of fix here that we could do that's kind of like a light lift or lift engineering wise that could hopefully give people like a bigger picture of what they're doing. I'll take that as an action item right now.
Along a similar line, something that I would really like to see is sort of like a percentage growth. I think we already discussed this, like kind of like a growth of the hub. Like I noticed that my hub like kind of grew in the past month, but I didn't realize that until I actually like took a look at number of members. So could be cool for an editor to actually like be able to keep track of that and be like, maybe my content is working or it's not working. And that should also be kind of simple to keep track.
So we have something super lightweight now on the editor leaderboard. Like if you go to the leaderboard and then under editors, you can set a time frame and it'll show like time frame over time frame, the change in the weekly active contributors in your hub. So if you do the last week, under your name, it'll say like active contributors up 10%. And so it'll do week over week, looking at the basically like weekly active contributors. Let me take a look.
Oh, it might be just me, but
I'll share a screen here to show. So if I'm on the editor leaderboard, this could just be for moderators. So if you guys can't see this, let me know and I'll make sure that it gets pushed to everybody. But in theory, like Simon shows up here, he's an editor of the Longevity Hub. This is looking from basically the past month. So over the past month, the Longevity Hub has gone from, I guess, like, maybe 25-ish to 36, something like that, like 50% growth. So yeah, that's basically like you can see time frame over time frame of.
Yeah, I don't have it, so I don't know if it's just because of the moderator kind of role, but I don't see it.
Interesting.
So,
yeah, I'll ping the engineering team and get them to push that so that way everybody can see it.
okay, so it's already solved. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Does anybody else have any questions here before we move on to the next thing on the agenda, just for the sake of time? Cool. Yeah, so like with all this being said, like the most important thing about ResearchHub is that we reward good stuff. And if we ever start rewarding bad stuff, that's not an ideal situation. So if you guys ever notice that, like feel free to ping me, because that's like super high priority on my mind, making sure that the rewards like actually incentivize healthy research behaviors. And we'll pretty much need everybody criticizing all the time in order to make sure that we do it right. So yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to me if you see something that like you don't like in the way the rewards are set up.
All right. So next up on the agenda, let's talk about Twitter Spaces. Malik and I played around with Twitter Spaces a little bit because several users have suggested to explore this option. And Malik, would you like to summarize our findings, or should I?
Sure, I can, or you can, either way. So yeah, we did like kind of a demo play with the Twitter Space about a couple of weeks ago, me and Anton, and it has a few pros and a few cons. So I'll just go over the pros and cons. Like, so the main thing is the pros is like it will just give us a little bit more publicity when we have the meeting. Ideally, it should be more like when we have like a special meeting where we want like people more than the regular community who want to like join and know more about ResearchHub. The other thing is it is recorded, so if anybody wants to listen in on it, it's available for about 30 days afterwards, and then it has a live script going on. So I mean, it's not perfect, but it does give you a written transcript of the discussion right as it's going on. The cons, mainly the issue is that the interface is good for cell phone, but not for computer. So especially if you want to be the speaker or the activity lead, then you cannot do it through computer. Just cannot. Like it's only available on phone. The second is like there is a little bit of delay in the voice. It's not as flawless as Google Meet that we are on. And the other issue is like, if you want to share something like we have on Google Meet right now, it's very easy to share it on the screen. But again, with Twitter Space, it's only limited to the cell phone. There's not much you can like share a PowerPoint slide or anything like that. So yeah, that's basically it. So me and Anton were like just discussing like for like special occasions, if we have, like people coming in or anything and want to like, publicize it more on those times, it can be useful. But I don't think for like regular our community meetings, it will be as easy to use as Google Meet or even helpful,
Yeah, so just to reiterate, basically the only thing going for Twitter Spaces in terms of use case for us is if we want to tap into some Twitter users' popularity, right? If we were to boost the main research account following, and then when it gets to a certain height, we could host an event, and that's a specific type of event. So like here, this format wouldn't be very good for Twitter Space because we talk, many users talk at the same time, taking turns. In Twitter Spaces, you only have a limited number of co-hosts. And by the way, you can only be a host or co-host or be allowed to speak at all if you are on a mobile device. So it's omega computer unfriendly. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If we have an invited guest, perhaps that's being interviewed by 1-2 people, that's probably the ideal use case for Twitter Spaces. And maybe perhaps the guest would host it on their account if the guest is bigger than the main ResearchHub account. Or I'm guessing the majority of events will be hosted on ResearchHub Twitter account instead. Go ahead, Ricardo.
Have you participated in any of the DeSci kind of like podcasts or like events on Twitter? What's your feedback that you have from that? How many people were there? Were they actually useful for bringing in additional people? Because I think that's the kind of like what we want to keep in mind for our future kind of like use cases. Because as Malik said, it's not going to be useful for community calls, but maybe for like a podcast series or AMA, I kind of find it difficult because if like the author wants to share some images and so on, it's not gonna be super easy to do on the phone. But maybe some of the DeSci chatter kind of spaces could be useful to take some I don't know, information from.
Yeah, I don't know what's the biggest DeSci Twitter Space event you guys have seen.
I've done like 2 or 3 of them, and they're always around like 15 to 30 people. And so it's not like a ton of people, but like what I've noticed happens is it helps us like cross-pollinate with other DeSci projects. I think we're like not quite as out there as some of the other like DAOs around research. And so it's helpful just to like help bring awareness, you know, to ResearchHub in our like, you know, in theory, lowest hanging fruit, like community member wise, people who are already interested in DeSci. But one thing I've noticed about Twitter Spaces and like, yeah, for me personally, I don't love it, but I think there's like something we could do here, which is kind of cool, is it ends up being like, I don't have a good term for this, but it feels like a little bit of like a therapy session where like people kind of like to individually like share their own experiences about like issues, you know, in science or like in DeSci, kind of where they see it going. It's less like a meeting led somewhere and more like a community sounding board. And so something that could be really cool is like if we put together like a regular series on like issues in academia, right? And like we can have individuals talk about how they've been like, you know, had personal negative experiences with like publishing or like writing grants or like, you know, getting worried about being scooped or something like that. Like we could talk about why these exist like in the traditional ecosystem and then like be like, oh, Web3, you know, like maybe we could do something to make all this better. And I think that would be compelling as like an education point for people interested in Web3. But yeah, what do you all think?
Nathan?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to back up what Patrick was saying about the Twitter Spaces. I think one of the projects that seems to be quite popular on Twitter is the Vita DAO project. And I think they've benefited from having quite a regular schedule of Twitter Spaces and community sort of events. And I totally agree with you as well that sometimes these sort of Twitter Spaces can turn into just people offering their own, you know, it sometimes loses a bit of structure, I think, at times. And so as a listener, you don't really know what you're doing there and where it's going. I think, you know, some of the events that you've done, Patrick and Anton, where you've had interviews that you've posted on YouTube, I think could work as Twitter Spaces in the same way that, you know, the traditional Clubhouse events sort of worked, where you have an initial discussion which people are watching and then you have a sort of Q&A feedback session at the end or something like that. I don't know what other people think about that.
I think I'll set up a bounty on DWork to host some Twitter Spaces, because I'm even thinking like a couple of like Twitter scientists like Dr. Bick, I think would probably do it, and it would be an amazing conversation. And so, yeah, I'll put up a bounty for somebody to organize it and host it. I think would be amazing.
Yeah, I think we need to think through what kind of format or what kind of event would best fit into the Twitter space structure, I guess. Do you think it's a discussion club or AMA?
Yeah, I think like interviews describing the issues in science, like Dr. Bick, for instance, like she calls out like academic like fraud, basically like image manipulations. And so just talking about like why do image manipulations happen, and then you can get into perish or publish, and then you can say like you know how the incentives in science are set up in a way that like kind of causes people to do this sort of bad behavior, and then she'll ResearchHub at the end. But yeah, I think interviews is probably a good one where we can even bring in people outside of DSci, like cool scientists who have audiences like on Twitter already. I think would be really cool.
Yeah, I agree with what Patrick said. I think if you were to look at the discussion format versus the interview format, I think a discussion format works much better on an event like on a platform like this, where everyone's sort of joining the discussion and there's a structure and there's like a meeting format and everyone knows what they're going into beforehand. Because Twitter Spaces just by design mean that people join in and out for quite a while. No one sets aside an hour necessarily, so they'll be there for 5 minutes. They won't really understand where they are in the discussion otherwise. And so I think that sort of interview format works a little bit better. And I completely agree that at least in the world of medical research, and in particular, you know, cardiovascular research that I follow, they are very, very keen on discussions on Twitter. It happens all the time, and I'm sure you'd be able to find many people to get involved in that if you wanted to.
Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful out-of-the-box DWork bounty, right? So perhaps better structured for a person who would do the entire process from start to finish, right? So they would identify the key speaker, invite them, then host the meeting, then perhaps share the recording, and that would be the bounty. Any more thoughts on the matter, or should we move on? All right, let's talk about the ELN. How can we make the ELN more robust? What kind of features do you guys want to see in ELN to make it more compelling for you to use it more frequently? And then we can also talk about how we can support the users who already use ELN and publish stuff. Maybe perhaps we could announce it on Slack better, tweet about it, make Reddit posts about it. For example, the C line post that was more or less recently posted.
Yeah, I think one important piece of context here too is that Thomas pushed the ability to add DOIs to ELN publications last Friday. So like in theory, ResearchHub can kind of act as a preprint server now. We'll build in peer review next. So yeah, we in theory like can have people like publish like manuscripts through ResearchHub right now, which is kind of cool.
I think for the ELN, what I mentioned this to Patrick, but something like a better like categorization system on the left panel, because for now I have just this like running list of a bunch of like separate documents that I've been piecing together, some things related to my research, some things related to other topics. So I think just maybe some folder system that allows you to bucket some of your broad ideas together. And then I think after that gets kind of organized better, a citation tool integrated into it would make it pretty robust.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Those are great suggestions. I bounced your folder idea off the team earlier today, and they're definitely thinking in that direction to help make it like actually useful. You know, if you have like 100 different notes or something in the ELN.
Lynn, you had a hand?
It was a mistake.
Okay. Is anyone actively using ELN now?
I'm going to be honest, I didn't even know that was a thing until this meeting. I didn't know we had one.
I was not sure that the DOI feature is already implemented. There should be an announcement. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, just
yeah.
The posting one. No, the DO one. I didn't realize that. So yeah, definitely putting out something to explain that. Also, I think we made a couple changes to the formatting. Now we can add like videos and stuff. I've seen it when I published the last piece. Also, I use it a lot as a kind of like a notebook. So like before posting comments, because like sometimes we have some bugs, and as we already put it in the Slack, maybe you refresh the page, you lose the comment and so on. I normally write all the comment in a notebook in an ELN, and then I just like copy and paste it on the main page. So it's kind of.
Oh yeah, I do that with my comments with a word processor because yeah, I've lost comments before, like early on. I was like, that's not happening again.
Yeah. So yeah, it's super useful to use it like that. So I kind of like open 2 pages and use it as a notebook.
Anton?
Yeah, I think from testing it, there is some issues with math type, I think. So I think I can only add formulas just like in a separate line, but not inline. And in general, I also actually use it a lot for note taking. So yeah, it would be cool to maybe have like a feature of maybe also saving papers, like making a reading list in the ELN or something, because right now I keep track with a table or something of things. I think that it would be also cool to have the opportunity to export to PDF. If we have, I don't know how it's being done in the backend. Depending, I mean, the coolest would be if it's like almost same like LaTeX or something in the back end, and then we could also make it like HTML friendly for the future. But right now, I think what would be helpful is if I really legitimately write big documents on there and I want to share it with my professor, I am a bit more hesitant to send her the link to the ResearchHub. But right now, sometimes it would be also great to introduce people by exporting to PDF.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I think PDF export, we definitely need to have that. So I'll add that to the list to report back. And then a couple of people have mentioned like ways to kind of manage like different papers within the ELN. One thing we talked about during our board meeting too is like just like strategy wise, ResearchHub's in kind of a weird spot where it's essentially a social app right now, but we're asking like professionals to spend their free time doing professional things on a social app without like the ability to get hired for a job or like really like earn grant, funding. And so we want to, in theory, build like a way to get ResearchHub more like into like the average academic's workflow without them having to do something like outside of like what they're already doing day to day. So we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but like building a citation manager that essentially like when you use it, you're earning RSC for using it. And then like the data you input like through the citation manager can be reflected on researchhub.com. For instance, like if everybody's saving this new paper that's really cool about like pluripotent stem cells, that paper could go to the top of researchhub.com without people upvoting it, just based on like citation manager usage. And so, yeah, we're gonna start to make designs on this just to like start to think about it from like, if we were to build it, what would we want to do? So yeah, if anybody has any thoughts on like a citation manager and how to like roll something out there that could be useful to help like bring new people into ResearchHub, definitely like let it percolate in your brain, because we'll be thinking about it a lot over the next like probably 2 to 3 months.
Okay, let's move on to maybe supplementing the ELN a little bit with social activity of our own. If someone posts, has anyone posted anything that is worthy of assigning DY yet?
I hope to kind of finish my perpetual review number 1 as soon as possible, but it's taking longer than expected because it's some work. But yeah, I hope to be able to do that soon. So that will probably be my first experiment.
Okay, well, that's a great example. What do you all think we should do when this is released? Should we tweet about it? Should we go all comment on it? What other ways we can support this little in-the-house publishing? Anton?
Okay, maybe not. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of with supporting. I'm wondering if you post this ELN and you make a post in terms of versioning, how this would work, right? In GitHub, we have pull requests, and we can make issues or whatever. And how would this go with publications right now? with the ALN, people can comment. But for instance, if they want to add something to Ricardo's perpetual review, right? I forgot, Ricardo detailed a lot of that stuff in this post, but they get rewards for adding stuff. And how would that work? Do they comment and when Ricardo edits his own post in the next iteration, or?
So this is something we're actually building now as part of a peer review feature. We're going to have version control within the ELN. So like you'll be able to essentially like have like version 1.1, 1.2, et cetera, be able to track all the changes. And then we'll eventually plug peer review in where you can see like a peer reviewers comments between the changes of like version 1.3 to version 1.4. And so there's probably a way that we could use this within like Ricardo's perpetual review paradigm of like keeping track of like the versions and like who contributed what to like each like additional version. We're thinking about it like very similarly to like GitHub issues essentially. So it'll end up looking kind of like GitHub where people like, you know, make suggested contributions and then whoever like owns like the repo would be able to accept them, reject them, that kind of thing. But yeah, we'll probably need to iterate on it a lot, but right now we're starting to build out like some kind of version control in the ELN. Another feature that Thomas was excited about was like inline commenting in the ELN. So like kind of like Google Docs, where if you want to like comment on someone's notes to give them feedback before they publish it like publicly, having some kind of like interactive ability there. So yeah, that's just another feature that we're thinking to make the ELN more robust.
I'm a fan of inline commenting, but I think you already said that you tried it out, but it was like a kind of some problems with that. But so, yeah, I would.
The problems before were from rendering PDFs inline. So like we could like take text from PDFs in theory, put them into our web page in order to work with like our inline commenting like feature, essentially. You can't do it in the PDF itself. And so PDF extraction is a hard problem that nobody's solved yet when it comes to like machine learning. And so you can get like 85% accuracy, but the last 15% looks really bad. And so we just nixed it because that 15% looks really bad. So the idea here is we can bring it back for posts through the ELN because they'll be in a format that's compatible with the feature of like using inline commenting. So yeah, I think in theory, we eventually want to like hopefully be able to render PDFs like in the web page, but until then have people like share stuff through the ELN and have that like output be something that you can have inline commenting on.
Oh, great.
Really excited about the version control. I think that's a unique value proposition, right? That currently doesn't exist. The reviews are not open. And the changes that are implemented are invisible in the final product.
There's like a couple journals that do this, like Journal of Open Source Software actually uses GitHub to like track all of their like peer review and they do it openly. So kind of like exactly what Anton's suggesting. And then another one I really like is F1000. Does a great job of like they're a preprint server that shows the peer review status to like the right side of the page. They have a pretty interesting UI. So there are a couple people I think doing this, but I agree this is probably how all peer review should be done.
Anton?
Yeah, sorry. One thing that dropped into my mind is also I think can we when working with figures, it's really cool that we have video or YouTube embedding works as well. But do we have can we add the text to the respective figures, like a subtext, like figure 1? I don't know. I think last time I missed it.
Yeah, I think just something we have to enable. It's a plugin. Yeah, so it shouldn't be too hard to add that.
Oh, but versioning sounds really cool. Okay.
Thomas, do you have any like specific questions for everybody about the feature set for the ELN?
Not right now.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, a bunch of different ideas, but
the feedback so far has been really helpful already.
Yeah, and again, if ideas pop up, feel free to DM me or DM Thomas because we'll probably be working on refining the ELN for like the existence of ResearchHub forever. So we'll keep adding to it. Definitely send us ideas.
All right, should we move on to the next item?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, doke. So a little bit of a discussion here about the meaning of things in ResearchHub. I don't know if you have encountered the situation, but sometimes when I tell people about ResearchHub and they get a little bit confused about uploading papers, and some people instantly assume that you can only upload something that you own, right? Something that you have published yourself. And even if you have published it yourself, some people are not clear on whether you're allowed to publicly share it like that or not. So it takes a little bit of describing to let them know that you're not actually claiming what you are posting, right? You are highlighting it. That like it's even awkward to describe what exactly are people doing when they upload papers on the ResearchHub. Not even uploading, but create entries for ResearchHub. You should definitely have a solid language for this process. That that's not to be confused with actually actions that make you own the content. What do you all think? How should we differentiate between submitting your content and kind of highlighting someone's content?
So I think this is a super important distinction, and I totally agree where like kind of the way that we have things now, like the user's profile picture, like on like the post, it sort of like intuitively suggests that they're the author. And so I think there's some UI things that we can do to help make this like more like clear. I also think at the end of the day, like as long as most of the value is going to the author, like that's the most important thing. And so, yeah, hopefully this new incentive structure is like a good step in the right direction here. But yeah, I guess so there's UI changes we can make to help make that delineation, more clear. But then do you all think there's like some instructions we need to add, like when people post, like how's the best way to help to clear up some of the confusion around, like, can I post this paper?
Shared by, I like it.
Yeah, shared by is good. That's a good idea.
So I guess one aspect is how is the poster viewed on the user interface when they post or share a an article that they didn't themselves author. But then I guess the other thing is that we should maybe put more emphasis on the actual authors and in some way display, if we can, where they're from, who they are, what their background is, if possible. Because within within a hub, within an area of interest, you've got some of the same names coming up, and maybe there should be some ways of being able to easily link to other posts on ResearchHub that are linking to papers authored by the same person, if that makes sense.
So are you suggesting, like at this part of the paper page, we change the UI to put more of the focus onto the authors and their background? Like maybe have these like be able to be clicked into and see more about them?
On my preference, and I don't know what other people think, but I think there's a certain interface that people are used to when you go on a journal's website, where underneath the title are the actual authors of the paper, and then in the tabs on the right we could have the poster. But I think the author should be listed underneath the title. I
actually like that. Yeah, this is where shared by should go, and then the author should be here with like a minimize, and then you can see Johns Hopkins, like the Sorbonne or whatever. Like
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great suggestion.
Malik?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that I really like that the author should be below the paper, and I think when we are trying to like post the paper, like we put the title and then we choose the hubs, maybe create like a section where we can just put the name of the authors there itself, and then when you post it, the name of the authors just or if this can be done at backend automatically, just like PubMed has. Either way, like if you want us to do it manually, then we can do that way too. But I really like if we put the authors underneath the title of the paper and just post it by on the right side.
Yeah,
the
like
paper, the offer add-in process is a little bit unoptimized right now, right? Because if the paper, if ResearchHub fails to extract the offer names automatically, you can't just manually write them in. You have to create profile for each offer before you can add them to the paper. So perhaps it would be better if it lists the placeholder text without the profile would be created. That could be especially important since now the pots of gold, the REC accumulated for authors will be more prominent. I guess that would be more important that we keep the identity of the authors attached to the papers. Actually, I would be curious to look at, are there any statistics on the number of papers on ResearchHub that do not have the authors inputted yet?
Oh, like missing the metadata?
Mm-hmm.
We can pull that. It just anecdotally, I bet it's like 10%.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, apparently pulling authors is a like non-trivial technical challenge. And so like we have kind of like an 80-20 solution that will definitely not like cover all of the issues. And yeah, I think it's going to be basically like people complain and then we fix issues. And we luckily, you know, have the coins to make sure everybody receives what they deserve, even if we have technical issues. But yeah, it's a challenging thing, and we'll actually probably, there are a couple groups doing like decentralized identification for researchers to help like make this like a little bit easier. But yeah, it's going to be something we'll have to work on, you know, to get it right.
Edwin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have a sense of the percentage of authors who claim their RC tokens?
Of the total papers, I can. So far, since we've changed to like a paper-based like claim, 197 have been claimed so far, and I'd say that's maybe like mainly 4 or 5 different authors, and then like a couple of editors like sprinkled in grabbing individual papers. But it's semi-exciting to me because like just in the last week or so, we've had like a couple of like non-ResearchHub affiliated researchers come in, and like one guy even uploaded like 150 of his own papers. He said he spent the entire weekend doing
That's
it.
great.
Claimed them all. Yeah,
It's awesome.
Yeah, another person yesterday, like some astrophysicist, claimed like a solid 30 something. So it's starting to like pick up a little bit. And I think yeah, once we make more progress on like the marketplace side for the token, hopefully it'll be even more like attractive for people to come in.
Jennifer?
Yeah, hello. I was wondering, so I think I usually upload from IEEE, and I don't think the authors are ever automatically uploaded. So is the recommendation for us to manually input those right now, or yeah, I wasn't sure what
So
we should be doing.
Thanks for bringing that up, because there are like specific journals that we have trouble with, and we can build like, you know, case by case, like kind of like uploading help. So if you're uploading a lot of IEEE, like we can figure out how to make sure that we grab all the metadata from those papers specifically, we just, you know, to help make it more convenient. We're thinking about this because we're fixing the paper upload flow right now to make it simpler, essentially. And one of the issues that we have is thinking about like, if we can't grab metadata, like what's the UX? Like, do we ask the like submitting user to go in and add it manually, or do we just post it without authors and hope they do? We don't have a great solution here, so would be curious to hear what everybody says. But like, just like from my own perspective, we have like Hotjar, and some like I can like go in and like see like user behavior on ResearchHub. And like nothing frustrates me more than when like a really smart person is just wasting their time putting in like you know, author data. Like that's such a waste of, like, it's not the intention of why we have people here. We want them to like, you know, not be doing manual labor, like doing stuff that's like hard and like, yeah. So I think it's not respectful to people's time to have them be adding in like authors themselves. I think dework bounties could totally work, like for like, you know, a lay person to be able to come in and like transcribe names. I think that's a great idea. But yeah, in my mind, it's a high priority to make sure that we get the metadata like accurately, so that way people aren't, you know, people spend their time like reading papers and sharing commentary rather than like just adding in metadata.
Okay, so for now, you wouldn't advise us to necessarily go back to all the old papers we've already uploaded and manually enter in all the authors or anything like that. Okay.
No, definitely don't. We'll be able to at some point retrospectively do it. And like if
Okay.
authors like, you know, see their paper, it's earned research coin and they want rewards, we'll be able to manually do it for people. Like if there's any issues with the like actual distribution of stuff.
Yeah,
Nathan?
Yeah, I was just gonna. A thought came into my head when you were talking about how some of these authors have done a great job of uploading their entire archive of papers in one go. I think that's great, but the thing is that now the way that the site works is that a lot of those papers will probably get missed in terms of the posts and the way that it's working, because if they all get uploaded in one go, it's very unlikely that people are going to be able to sift through and actually get to it. And I suspect, as ResearchHub, gains popularity, gains users, and gains, most importantly, existing researchers with large archives, I think that will be a more common issue, where they'll be really excited, upload all their papers, and then most of them will probably just get lost in the ether. And maybe there's got to be some solution to that, maybe through highlighting existing papers that you've uploaded over time and things like that. I'm not sure.
So this is a super great point. I'm really glad you brought that up. Like, one thing we could do is add, like, has this paper been claimed to the hot score? So in theory, like, if you claim a paper, your paper is going to the top, of the homepage, and like we'll have like a little button on it that says, authors here, like, ask a question. Like, we could try and direct people to papers claimed by authors to try and start those conversations. That's a awesome idea. Would it be better baked into the hot score, or maybe another filter where it's like you can sort by author claimed posts if you just want to like see only author claimed stuff?
Ricardo?
Yeah, that's a great point, Nathan. I think another cool idea could be when we are actually going to create some content, some original content on ResearchHub, and maybe tagging some papers that are already on ResearchHub, maybe bringing them up again. Let's say you make a review, by tagging some papers, they come up again. So you're gonna give live to the papers again, and you kind of like bring them up.
Yeah, totally. It's a great point. The more I think about the citation manager, the more it just makes perfect sense, because it's like the best way to track like what papers are people using. Like, not even like what are they sharing, it's like what literally are people reading right now, what are they using. I know like Mendeley uses like that kind of data for their altmetric, like Elsevier, whatever has like altmetric score, and they use citation manager data in it. It's like, that's cool, but it's all proprietary, so they don't share it at all. So I think we could do something open, which would be nice. Malik?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention a point about like when you mentioned that how we can have, if authors have claimed, then that paper would show more on like the, like if you can sort it that way. But the other way to sort that I still haven't found on ResearchHub is like, yeah, if I post a paper today that was published 3 years ago, it's still showing in the newest. And then that research is already like 3 years old. Not that that makes it necessarily good or bad, but at some point, that data is getting outdated. If I post my paper that I published in undergrad that's like 10 years ago, then there is more data that has come out since then, and I think ResearchHub can benefit from those latest papers more than my paper from that time. So that's some way to search that, like let's say disease pemphigus, to the latest research comes up first, or at least you can sort it that way.
It reminds me of like DOAJ. It's like the open access search kind of engine. You can search by like most relevant or like most recently published. Yeah, I totally agree. I guess like same question, should it be a filter, or should that just automatically be counted into the hot score? Like where we just try and have more recent papers up at the top.
I was just thinking filter, but I mean, whatever everybody thinks. I mean, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Nathan?
Yeah, I just wanted to share an idea that I had, partly related to this, and then also a content idea, see what people think. Where if we notice that we've got a researcher that's uploaded their entire archive or something like that, could we perhaps invite them to write a post on ResearchHub, which basically says something like, hi, this is my name, I've just joined ResearchHub, this is a summary of my research to this date. And then they can themselves in one post say, this is what I've been working on, these issues, these issues, these issues. These are the key papers that I've published in these areas. This is where you should start with me. And then invite people to ask them questions. I think that could be a really great way of celebrating someone coming onto ResearchHub, sharing their research with them, and then letting them signpost people to the most important papers they've published, rather than leaving it to the algorithm or whatever. I think that could be quite a cool idea. I don't know what people think.
I love it. I think it's like kind of brilliant, where if you're willing to take the time on your weekend to upload all your papers, if we have like an ambassador who reaches out and is like, whoa, this is awesome, you're so cool, like more people want to like hear from you, like you can do this stuff, and like even we can get our community to start to share your papers around, which might have like a professional benefit for you. Yeah, this is awesome. I'm thinking like with Jeff and Ricardo are working on like a structure of like working groups where we can start to help to like organize like some more individual effort when it comes to like managing some of these like sort of outreach tasks. So I'm thinking like a working group that's almost like community relations is the wrong word, but like a welcome party to like help make like new people on ResearchHub feel engaged, like reach out to them and be like, this isn't just an app, you're part of a community now, here are the people, like we all want to help you and stuff. Like I think that's a really cool, like positive, like community feeling thing. So yeah, we should totally do a working group on that.
I think we should also issue them an NFT. Like if you upload all that stuff, we should issue an NFT and then highlight like we don't understand all the characteristics of this NFT, but the DAO could vote on the characteristics or like what benefits people who do that early on get. I think that'd be pretty good. So.
Yeah, totally. We're definitely excited about that. Kind of the V1 of the NFT that we're thinking is pretty much that. Where like if you publish through the ELN or if you claim a paper, you can say, hey, I want an NFT with this. And like we just give you an NFT and help you sell it on OpenSea if you want to. And then we'll iterate from there to like make it cooler and have like fun incentives behind the NFTs. But yeah, that's the V1 of like, if you're the person who did this work, do you want to mint it? Do you want a collectible with it? But yeah, Edwin, I'll loop you into those conversations that we're having design wise, because like, yeah, we're trying to think through NFTs like deeply over the next 3 months or so. So if you want to join in, I can loop you into some of the chats we're having around that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. Nick?
Just real quick too, you could also do like an NFT for, this person's uploaded or 10 or 50 or 100, like a tiered kind of reward, so they could have that rep directly attached to them.
Yeah, totally. I think, yeah, NFTs we think are like pretty exciting, and there's like a shit ton of potential. And yeah, we want to make sure that we do it the right way and don't want to like, half step into something without it being fully thought through. So yeah, we want to take our time and like, yeah, the more feedback and really the critical feedback that we can get here, like we'll end up building something that like in theory will be appealing, to even people who don't, aren't NFT centric.
Is it a good idea? Because I'm assuming a lot of people here go through different products, and I don't know, setting up a space perhaps where people just talk about different kinds of NFT tokenomics that they're seeing, because things that happen in gaming could be relevant for a wide range of industries. Let's say could be relevant to models that work for us. So just having something where people can talk about interesting models might actually be pretty useful.
Yeah, I love it.
Can I jump in here, Patrick? Actually, me and Ricardo and Iridia have been like working on setting up a Discord. So the idea is the Slack is like a lot more like science native. So a lot of like academics prefer Slack, but a lot of like the crypto native people use Discord, and Discord like has this role system, and it's really good for working groups. So we have the Discord set up where we're just working on like adjusting like moderation, like restrictions and things like that. But we have working groups set up in there, and we'll definitely take a lot of feedback on like which extra working groups you guys think we should incorporate or where certain things can get plugged into. And the Discord will be very, very well integrated into dwork. So you can reward people directly doing bounties from those working groups in dwork. So it's like pretty much almost set up. So just stay tuned for that, and like please give it like any feedback you can about that. Send it over to me and Ricardo, and we'll do it.
All right, we are a little bit over an hour now. We haven't talked about the upvotes, downvotes, and the editorialized title yet, but perhaps a longer discussion here is warranted. Do you want to?
Kobe wanted to join this one too, right? I think it's okay pushing that to next week.
Okay, sounds good. Just a little quick something about the offer versus poster before we adjourn. Even in the upload, even the new paper upload process, the name for the action is you upload the paper, which I think might be a little bit misleading because you don't actually upload anything sometimes, right? Maybe share, but share also implies that it's yours to share.
I think share is a big improvement over upload. So
Yeah.
we can do that, and then we can go from there. But share is more like, hey world, take this, rather than like claiming ownership.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts before we adjourn the meeting?
I like the energy of this meeting more than some of the other ones. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, this one's been amazing. There's so many good ideas that came out. Thank you guys. Thanks everybody. This is pretty like exciting in general.
I must have missed the toxic ones.
Cool. Well, thank you, Edwin.